Seven, directed by David Fincher and written by Andrew Kevin Walker, follows detectives William Somerset, played by Morgan Freeman, and David Mills, played by Brad Pitt, as they investigate a series of grisly murders inspired by the 7 deadly sins. The seasoned Somerset and the impulsive Mills uncover crime scenes that each represent one of the sins. You know the 7 deadly sins. I'm not going to read them to you. As the investigation progresses, the enigmatic killer, John Doe, played by Kevin Spacey, unexpectedly surrenders and leads them to the 2 final victims. The film's climax is memorable, to say the least, and one that probably will not be forgotten in cinema history for a long time. The film is brilliant in general and put Fincher well and truly on the map if he wasn't already at that point, and holds up to this day.
Does it ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it 2 nights ago because I knew, well, I had a good hunch you were going to talk about it.
Yeah.
It holds up. It is tight.
Yep.
And scary, and it's the performances were amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know where to start. There are so many points of intersection with these 2 films that I really don't know where to start, so I'll let you.
I have a starting point for us. So coming out of the cinema, I said I was disturbed by Longlegs. If you watch Seven, and you can remember back watching it in the 90s, or you've rewatched it recently, what you will find is it is still, and always was, a highly disturbing film. All the way through. The tone, the cinematography, the setting, the murders, the thrilling ride of watching these 2 detectives try to figure out what the hell's going on. Kevin Spacey is about as disturbing as it gets.
Wow.
In an opposing way to the way Nick Cage plays this character. And yet, I think as a point of difference, I would say that Fincher handles the tone, the disturbing tone of the film so masterfully that when you put it next to Longlegs, I think you can only come away feeling that Longlegs is trying to do something similar and not quite getting it right. At least that was my sort of conclusion after watching Seven again.
Yeah, well, you're right on every part of that. There's an interesting quote by Morgan Freeman that I think might have been the genesis of Longlegs. This could be a stretch, but Morgan Freeman in what's his name in the film?
I just said it. Somerset.
Somerset.
Yeah.
He says, and I quote, "If he turns out to be the devil himself, that might live up to our expectations."
Yeah.
So he's basically saying that Kevin Spacey is just a bloke and he's not going to live up to some sort of magical version of some supernatural being. If he's the devil himself, he might live up to our expectations, and that's exactly what Osgood Perkins did.
Yeah.
Is created the serial killer to be the devil himself.
Absolutely.
That's a tangent, but you'd be mad not to think that Perkins is watching the film and hearing these things and writing little notes and saying, I'll do a film about Longlegs.
Absolutely. Something interesting too is when you watch Seven, the setting is a sort of grungy city that's overridden by criminals, crimes awash. Everywhere you go, you're likely to have something awful happen to you. And it's just sort of laced throughout the whole film. And then Oz Perkins presents us with suburbia, middle America, calm, peaceful farmland, beautiful barns and white picket fences where there's an evil lurking underneath. And they're kind of these 2 opposing approaches to America that both work kind of equally well, actually. So that was something that I came away thinking a bit about, is sort of how broad disturbing can be. Like disturbing can be quite in your face, and it can be unrelenting, but it can also be lurking under the surface and be, unsettling in that way of feeling that it might pop up at any minute.
Yeah, you've got John Doe, Spacey, is the lurker, the sort of the more quiet, sedate terror beneath this, on the surface, this awful landscape. And then, it's kind of flipped with Longlegs, isn't it? Yeah, the idealized suburbia and this crazy larger-than-life evil.
Totally. And I think that leans into Longlegs being more of a horror than a thriller in some regards. Like if you're going to make a thriller, I think you're going to be more inclined to make everything a little bit larger than life. If you're making a horror, I think you're going to be more inclined to make the horror sort of lurking under the surface, particularly with this kind of film. I mean, there's so many ways to go about it.
Was there anything else specific that you thought with Seven? I thought there were at least a couple of direct similarities.
Absolutely. So, and you'll find this with Silence of the Lambs as well. There is the serial killer is found out before the end of the film and interrogated.
Not just found out and interrogated, the serial killer halfway through the film surrenders themselves.
Correct.
Well, in Longlegs he doesn't quite surrender, but it's a surrender, really.
Yeah.
Like you can see it. It's quite an important moment in the film, actually, because he's just going about his business. They don't make it long-winded. They go from basically a clue to his whereabouts to him walking to get the bus and the cop cars surrounding him.
Yeah.
And he just goes willingly. I quite liked that.
And what's great about it too is that the horror is not over.
That's the same.
In both cases.
Yes.
Yeah.
In both cases, the horror has been planted in advance.
Correct.
Virtually in a box.
Yep.
In both times. Well, not a box, a doll, whatever.
Sure.
But it's been planned and it lives on after the suicides of both.
That's a great point. One's a head in a box and one's a box in a head.
That's true. Yeah.
I'll also point out that the serial killer leaves notes, and there's this whole kind of linking to the devil and satanic things and the Bible and quoting scripture and so on and so forth to give it that extra kind of icky, disturbing feel that you get with these sorts of films.
Yeah, I thought all that was a bit on the nose.
Sure.
However,
in Seven, not on the nose, I would say.
No.
Works perfectly.
Yeah, yes. Just word perfect. The script, I can't give examples, but I had the subtitles on as well. So I was really focusing on the words and how tightly the script was edited, and only those words that were relevant were put in. It was really beautiful. I'd like to just read it one day.
Totally. I would say on another last note that we've got similar characters going on in these films. We've got the serial killer. We've also got the detective. We've got the detective that's central to the story and will become a victim. Big spoiler alert there. And it's quite stark in how the characters are kind of handled, I think. I just felt dialogue, performance across the board was so strong in Seven, and it's a bit patchy in Longlegs. You get moments that are great, and I will say that the lead actress in Longlegs, I'm sure we're going to see her around a lot. She's got a lot going for her, and she's great to look at. She's a great leading lady. Micah Monroe, I was just forgetting her name, but yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of her.
She was in It Follows.
There you go.
As well.
Yeah.
I don't want to get sidetracked off Seven, but I was finding her performance inconsistent initially with Longlegs, and like sometimes she seemed completely on the far end of the spectrum, that she really couldn't relate to people at all. Like when she's speaking to the kid about the birthday party, it seemed like she was not really functioning as an adult in the world.
Totally, yeah.
And then other times she seemed to be just a proxy for us, like a perfectly reasonable person. So that bothered me. But then I actually ended up forgiving it once you know that she's got this battle going on in her head, and that could explain the sort of the up and down nature of her
Absolutely.
character.
Yeah, absolutely.